under cell cycle is cell cycle checkpoints. So we are going to talk about cell cycle checkpoints here. Now, what are these checkpoints? Now, when you go on a highway, you get various points, or when you keep going on a road, you get various checkpoints where traffic police or people of the traffic authority, they will stop you, do some necessary checkings. Or if you're traveling on a highway, you get speedometers where they keep checking your speed limit. Right. So what are all these measures done for? Well, one, you should not exceed the speed limit. Two, whether you are driving properly. And at checkpoints, you can or the traffic, you can check for your fuel level or whether the air of your tires, and etc etc. All this is to prevent unnecessary damage or accidents. Similarly, our cells, they are also have checkpoints in the cell cycle. Now these checkpoints are points where they are gaps, rather they are pit stops or gaps, small little breaks, or we can call them breaks in the cell cycle at various stages of cell cycle. Now we know that there are three main phases in the interphase and one M phase. So at each phase you will have a break or a pit stop or a gap of a cell cycle. And why are you having this gap? You're having this gap to carry out checking. Checking of what? One, mass of the cell. If the cell is growing properly, because we know that when the cell cycle begins, it starts from a very small young immature cell. So as and as it keeps increasing its components, its constituents, it keeps doubling its DNA, it needs to grow in size. So we are seeing whether it is growing in size or not. Two, DNA duplication, whether the replication of the DNA has happened or not, whether the synthesis, that is replication and copies of DNA, are formed properly or not. And three, DNA damage. If even after forming the replication, do you have any damage? Means during replications, are there any gaps in the DNA which did not get duplicated? Are there any errors in the DNA? So all this needs to be checked. And when all the checkings are done, that means if the mass of the cell is good, if the DNA is replicated properly, and if there is no damage, then only the cell will proceed. The cell will proceed into division phase. If any of these requirements are not met, then the cell cycle halts. So you have something called as the stop or the cell cycle. If any of these requirements did not meet, the cell cycle will stop. Two things it will try to do. One, it will try to repair the problem. It will try to repair the problem, and if it is still not able to repair the problem, it creates apoptosis or cell suicide, where that cell will die instead of creating a faulty cells in the future. Okay, so this is cell's own mechanism. In fact, you can compare it with your factory. Let us say you have a soap factory. At each level of the soap making, there will be quality checks, right? Let us say if the soap weight is proper or not, if the soap consistency is proper or not, if the bars are of the same shape or not, if all the chemicals that have been added in the soap are of the same proportion or not. If, let us say, in any quality check, if the quality control people found out that one quality is not good, they return the entire batch of soaps and say you rectify it and send. And if it is irreparable, they throw the batch away. So the same thing happens in the cell, because if you create a faulty cell, many of these create conditions like cancers and tumors, which are very, very dangerous. And they are a result of failure of cell cycle. Cancers and tumors, they are result of failure of cell cycle. If you're having damaged DNA and the cell cycle was not able to check it. Okay, so that is your cell cycle. So these checkpoints where the different stages of the cell cycle, the checkpoints are gaps at different stages of the cell cycle where different properties of a cell in the interface is checked and is qualitatively maintained so that it proceeds to the next stage of divisions. And these, please remember, these are not some joke or not some hypothetical conditions. These are a very important and necessary conditions that have to be satisfied. You have to maintain these conditions. Otherwise, there is no point of the entire cell cycle. So these are very, very necessary conditions. If when and each condition is satisfied, then only the cell will proceed into the next phase of the cell cycle.
For more content, like, share, and subscribe to www.i-win.in.